For some reason, Heaven felt that something wasn't right, but he didn't pay it too much attention. Wang Chong was dead, and all the human experts were already dust. With his vast army of otherworldly invaders, there was no one left who could oppose him. Once we get those last 3 stones of destiny, we can finally get our long-desired wish. Heaven's eyes began to burn with enthusiasm. Heaven had never been able to control these stones of destiny, so he had never been able to fully research their secrets. However, as the strongest existence in the world, Heaven could sense the incredible power and laws suffused within them. So long as he could get the last 3 stones of destiny, he could obtain an immense and absurd strength. Buzz! Heaven brought his index and middle fingers together and swiftly brought them up to the center of Wang Chong's forehead. At that moment, a powerful energy began to make its way to the depths of Wang Chong's mind. Heaven was already very familiar with the process. With a single thought, he could easily remove the 3 stones of destiny from Wang Chong's body. Bang! But just as his energy began to seep into Wang Chong's brain and wrap around the stones, something completely unexpected happened. With a massive boom, the stone of destiny in Wang Chong's mind exploded with light, a massive energy howling out like a tsunami and jolting away Heaven's power. Moreover, this energy even transformed into a golden barrier with a diameter of about 10 feet that pushed Heaven away from Wang Chong's side. And then something even more shocking transpired. Wang Chong's body was in tatters from the fierce battle, and Heaven's final attack had blasted apart his meridians and even shattered his skull. He was dead as dead could be. But at this moment, Heaven clearly saw golden light flowing out of Wang Chong's body like lava and bringing together the remains of Wang Chong's body. This golden light was suffused with an absurd vitality, and this vitality began to restore Wang Chong's body at an incredible speed, bringing together his shattered meridians, rebuilding his organs, merging his bones, and making all of them stronger and stronger. At the same time, a vigorous vitality began to radiate from Wang Chong's body. Impossible! Simply impossible! Heaven's eyes flew open, and he trembled in disbelief. He understood more than anyone else the power he had used in his attack. Heaven had not simply given Wang Chong's body a heavy injury. He had also injured Wang Chong's soul. This power from another world could deal terrible damage to martial artists, and Wang Chong should have had no chance at surviving. Someone that Heaven had killed should not have been able to revive. But, bang! A hint of vicious killing intent flitted across Heaven's face. Without the slightest hesitation, he summoned energy from his dantian and savagely punched at Wang Chong. As he punched, black energy surged out. The moment it appeared, it created pitch-black spatial fissures in the air. Bang! With a massive boom, the earth groaned and sundered. But Wang Chong and that golden barrier vanished as if they were an illusion. You can't run! Heaven's eyes chilled, and he instantly located Wang Chong once more. He was now sure that all the various things that had occurred, including that sense of wrongness he had felt, originated from Wang Chong. But no matter what that energy was, he would not give Wang Chong the chance. No power could stop him from getting the last 3 stones of destiny. Bang! A moment later, an even greater power erupted from Heaven's body, and the winds howled around him as the figure of that massive otherworldly god manifested once more. And this time, the enormous figures of the Celestial Emperor appeared with it. Not just 3, but 6. Heaven's power had reached a terrifying level, far stronger than he had been at any point in the past. No matter what was happening with Wang Chong, one punch would be enough to obliterate him without even leaving a corpse. Buzz! Heaven had barely begun to move, that decaying and chaotic death energy yet to erupt, when suddenly, as if time had stopped, Heaven was frozen in place. His body trembled, and on that divine visage which looked down on all living things, a hint of deep fear appeared. No! Impossible! This can't be! Heaven's eyes trembled, and their focus slowly turned to the center of his forehead. The 7 stones of destiny in his mind, the ones that he had spent so many years trying to obtain, had suddenly trembled as if some power was pulling on them, and they were starting to break free of his control. For countless years, Heaven had spent night and day trying to refine these stones of destiny and link them with his own life. Thus, when these 7 stones of destiny were pulled upon, heaven's own energy was affected. The influence of these 7 stones of destiny rendered heaven immobile, so there was no need to discuss attacking Wang Chong. But this was far from the end of it. Several thousand feet away, heaven could clearly see the deceased Wang Chong's eyelids fluttering and then opening. At the center of his forehead, a large stone of destiny appeared, floating into the air as it vibrated. Upon seeing this, heaven suddenly understood what was going on. No one can seize our stones of destiny. Nobody. Heaven clenched his teeth, his heart erupting with anger. He had gone to such great lengths to break free, and he had finally reached this point. No matter what, he would never permit an ant, a puppet, a prey, to steal something from him and ruin all his efforts. Bang! Heaven unleashed all his latent potential. A terrifying eruption of psychic energy and stellar energy engulfing everything within 100,000 feet of heaven. All the human soldiers and even many otherworldly invaders were instantly obliterated. Wang Chong could use his stone of destiny to try to steal his things, and he could turn it around and use his 7 stones of destiny to try to take Wang Chong's. None of his 7 were comparable to the size of Wang Chong's, but when put together, they were about the same size. More importantly, Wang Chong had just been revived and was still far from being a match for him. In this universe, no one could oppose him. As heaven was exerting all his power, Wang Chong opened his mouth and said, "Heaven, you've lost." As he spoke, his aura swiftly began to transform. Wang Chong's body had been so ravaged that he had been no different from a dead man. Even if he had recovered, he had still lost all his strength and wasn't much stronger than an ordinary person. But with the power of the golden seed, Wang Chong experienced a momentous transformation. In a few short moments, his power grew many times stronger. The true martial realm, the profound martial realm, the imperial martial realm, the saint martial realm. He had soon passed the subtle realm and entered the grotto heaven realm, and his strength was continuing to climb. At this moment, Wang Chong's body was like a giant black hole. He was not using any sort of art, but all of the world's power was rushing into his body. The golden seed was the world's seed, and when it sprouted, all the energy in the world was available for him to use. Humph! No matter what's happening with your body, you will never be able to match us. Heaven's face chilled at Wang Chong's words, and he immediately gathered up all his stellar energy and sent higher universal energy into the 7 stones of destiny. Though he had never been able to control these stones of destiny over the years, he had not been completely without progress. He was able to harness some of their power. This was how he was able to break the seal, and even break the barrier between the human world and the world of otherworldly invaders to occupy the body of their god. Buzz! The 7 stones of destiny at heaven's brow erupted with light and began to radiate the same energy pulses as Wang Chong's stone of destiny. There were silver rays of light coming out of these stones of destiny, flowing into heaven's body and through his feet into the ground. At that moment, the foundational energy of the world began to enter heaven's body. Yes. Heaven's ultimate goal was to use the 10 stones of destiny to devour the foundational energy of the world and make it his own. But a moment later, before heaven could fully utilize the power of the stones of destiny, a formidable rejecting force emerged from the stones of destiny. Several different energies abruptly appeared within the 7 stones of destiny. It was as if a floodgate had come down, hindering the connection between heaven and the stones. This is impossible. A hint of shock appeared in heaven's eyes. He had possessed these stones of destiny for an extremely long time now. In the past, he had attempted to use them numerous times, but a situation like this had never occurred. Moreover, the earliest of these 7 had died more than 10,000 years ago. He knew that he had killed all of them and wiped all traces of their energy from the stones of destiny. How could this? Buzz! Heaven realized something, and his body trembled in shock. A backup plan. All 7 of those people were dead, but they had all left behind a backup plan. Heaven had been fooled by their joint scheme. Heaven, you finally understand. In heaven's mind, a figure suddenly appeared. His face was blurred, but the dragon robe that he wore marked him as the emperor of the Sui dynasty. I was no match for you and couldn't stop you from taking my stone of destiny. But after several hundred years, someone has come to deal with you. And you dare act impudently before us. Heaven's face turned red in anger. Among all the holders of the stone of destiny, this one was the weakest, his stone of destiny the easiest to obtain. Heaven hadn't even needed to personally intervene to kill him and seize his stone of destiny. Is that so? Differences in strength are relative. Heaven, did you really think we could not see through those tricks of yours? A sovereign with a kingly aura emerged from another stone of destiny. From the moment you conspired against us and killed Wuxia, we began to plan on how to deal with you. This figure's royal aura was on par with the Qin first emperors. If Wang Chong had seen this, he would have immediately recognized this man as the expansionist ruler of the Central Plains, Emperor Wu of Han. With just you lot? Heaven angrily laughed, his eyes brimming with killing intent. A bunch of dead people, only wisps of their souls left, and you think we can't deal with you? We will now wipe out the last vestiges of your souls and ensure that all of you are truly nothing but dust. As Heaven spoke, he unleashed all his energy to wipe away the traces these seven had left on their stones of destiny. Ha ha! Heaven, you truly are too arrogant and conceited. You overestimate yourself, and you have underestimated all of us. Another figure emerged from a stone of destiny, his aura even stronger than Emperor Wu's. Long before, we all predicted this day would come, and we each left behind a plan. The remnant souls we left behind are naturally not enough to stop you. But in concert with all the other arrangements we left on the continent, things are naturally different. Buzz. The mention of these other arrangements made Heaven's heart run cold, and his eyes twitched several times. How could that be? How could they have other arrangements? How could he not know? No, we will never lose to you. Heaven's eyes spewed flames of anger. A vast psychic energy blasted toward the seven stones of destiny, hoping to wipe away the mental traces the seven of them had left. But it was too late. Rumble. The world trembled, and far away, in the distant 9 provinces, the Jing province, the Yan province, the Yong province, the Qing province, the Ji province, the Su province, the Yu province, the Yang province, and the Liang province. These were the ancient 9 provinces of the Central Plains, and at this moment, all 9 of them were shaking as stones of varying size were drawn up into the air by an invisible force. And in the center of these various shards of stone were massive rocks, each one weighing hundreds of thousands of pounds. If one looked carefully, one would realize that each large rock had a mysterious character carved into it. There were 9 of these massive rocks and 9 different symbols. As those rocks floated into the air, massive formations began to emerge from them, the smallest covering a range of nearly 700,000 feet. Powerful energies emerged from the giant rocks, and 7 of them shared energies that were an exact match for the stones of destiny in Heaven's possession. The other 2 belonged to the Sage Emperor and Shenyuan. Impossible, absolutely impossible. Heaven's face was stricken with disbelief. The others were one thing, but Shenyuan and Li Tai were entirely another. Yellow Emperor Shenyuan had willingly been lured into the Celestial Palace. Immortality and the throne of the Celestial Emperor had been extremely tempting to Shenyuan. In Xuanyuan's youth, Heaven had intentionally revealed these things to him, and Shenyuan should have known nothing about the truth before entering the Celestial Palace. How could he have left behind this formation despite knowing nothing? As for Li Tai, from a certain perspective, he had died of old age. He had died within the Imperial Palace, and the last of his strength had gone to the Shangliu Formation, while all of his property had been given to Wang Chong. When had he had time to lay down this formation in the 9 provinces? Had he known about something early on, leading him to make these arrangements? Persisting in evil brings about self-destruction. Heaven, you were too arrogant, ensuring your failure. Another figure emerged in front of Heaven, none other than Yellow Emperor Shenyuan. This was a projection from the Stone of Destiny he had left with Wang Chong. Heaven, we never had a chance to meet, and in the end we had no opportunity to have a proper fight. But in the end, you still lost. Another light appeared, and Sage Emperor Li Tai walked out. The arrangements left behind had now taken effect. Those rocks and the 7 stones of destiny floating above heaven's brow were radiating brighter and brighter light. 7 of those 9 formations were resonating with heaven's 7 stones of destiny, strengthening their power. This was the greatest power that all of them could leave behind, and over many years, it had accumulated and grown even more powerful. In the past, they would have found it very difficult to suppress heaven. But heaven had seized their stones of destiny and fused them with his mind. This gave them a perfect means of suppressing him. Impossible! Impossible! When did you leave these tricks behind that we would not know of them? Heaven finally asked, looking up at Li Tai. 10 some years ago, in the capital, when you used those despicable methods against me, the sage emperor directly answered. Bang! Heaven trembled in shock, his eyes widening. 10 some years ago, right before he had been trying to break into the divine martial realm. Heaven had never imagined that this would be the answer, that Li Tai would have so long ago made his arrangements. Li Tai, we underestimated you. We truly underestimated all of you, but you have not won yet. Even if you hid so many things from us, it is useless. We will shatter all the power you left behind. One by one, heaven's body seethed with killing intent. He was heaven, the supreme celestial emperor, the eternal overlord of the human world. Even gods and devils had to obey his orders. No one could defeat him. An absurd delusion. Floating in the air, Wang Chong spoke. There are some things that have never been yours, and it does not matter how much you try to seize and steal them. Wang Chong swelled with power. Not only was he at the half-step divine martial realm, he was far stronger. He was brimming with energy and at his peak state. Stimulated by this energy, the stone of destiny at his brow erupted with even more dazzling light. Boom! Wang Chong opened his hand and grabbed in the direction of heaven's brow. A moment later, heaven's brow trembled, and then the 7 stones of destiny began to move toward Wang Chong as if something was pulling on them. Whether it was in terms of aura, energy, luster, or size, Wang Chong's stone of destiny far surpassed heaven's. If one had to force these stones of destiny to choose one master, there was no doubt that they would choose Wang Chong. Sensing what was happening, heaven paled. Clack, crack. Heaven could sense his grip on the stones of destiny loosening, and he unleashed all his energy to try and stop the trend. But as heaven struggled, that pull grew more and more powerful. Wang Chong now, Shen Yuan called out. Bang! As he spoke, one of the stones of destiny broke free and flew straight toward Wang Chong. No! Heaven called out, reaching out with his right hand to try and stop it, but there was no stopping it. Thud, thud, thud. Soon after that, all 7 stones of destiny unleashed a powerful force, pushing heaven away. One stone of destiny was controlling the other 9. As the stones of destiny flew out, heaven felt his connection with them being severed, and instantly suffered a severe backlash. On the other end, the 7 stones of destiny merged with Wang Chong's, and a new, never-before-seen, and dazzling stone of destiny was born. The light unleashed by the complete stone of destiny was so bright as to seem like a moon or sun. At that moment, Wang Chong felt an unprecedented energy. Wang Chong, this is all we can help you with. The rest is up to you. We can delay heaven for a while. No matter what, you must succeed. The stones of destiny have simply merged, and it's not back to its complete form just yet. You have to reach the divine martial realm to do it. The life or death of this world will all depend on you. In the howling winds, Shen Yuan, the sage emperor, Emperor Wu of Han, the Qin first emperor, all of the former holders of the stones of destiny appeared before him, their bodies growing increasingly indistinct. Wang Chong knew that their energies were scattering, and it wouldn't be long before they completely vanished. Everyone, thank you. Wang Chong's eyes became resolved as he shot into the air like a rocket. As he soared upward, the 9 provinces shuddered, the 9 floating rocks sending beams of energy into the heavens. Rhea! With resounding cries, the energy left by the 9 stones of destiny turned into 9 true dragons that flew toward Wang Chong. These 9 true dragons all had different appearances, but their whiskers, scales, and claws were all realized in vivid detail. In a flash, they had charged into Wang Chong. With the assistance of these 9 streams of dragon qi, Wang Chong's dragon qi instantly swelled. His body rose and higher into the heavens. As he soared upward, Wang Chong was able to see the battlefield, racked by smoke and fire as the mountains and rivers crumbled. Wang Chong could see tens of thousands of otherworldly invaders rushing in through the teleportation gates, their thick death energy sweeping across the world, and beneath their feet, layers of ice crept with astonishing speed over the world. Wang Chong saw countless broken war banners and piles of corpses across the battlefield. 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. Wang Chong couldn't even count the number of corpses. All he could see were countless soldiers being cut down like weeds. But even at the final moments of their lives, they still struggled, roared, and battled. None of them had given up. And far on the edge of the continent, Wang Chong saw countless boats anchored at sea, countless figures standing atop them and anxiously looking to the north. And even farther away, across the ocean in the Promised Land, Wang Chong could see Zhang Munian, Li Zhuxin, numerous noble scions, and countless civilians nervously looking in the direction of the Central Plains, their eyes carrying both hope and concern. Arabs, Sindhi, Turks, Han, there was no difference between them in that place. All of them had placed their hopes in the north, and all of them were waiting for news about the war. These were the people of the world. They carried the legacy of human civilization that had persisted for countless years. They were simple and ordinary. Each of them had a father, a mother, a daughter, a husband. All of them had the most passionate of emotions, and all of them were living and active beings, not ants. They were me, you, him. Heaven. I won't let you have your way. As this thought passed through Wang Chong's mind, he accelerated and soared even higher. Bang! As he broke through the clouds, he opened his mind. Borrowing the 9 streams of dragon qi, Wang Chong broke through the restraint and entered that domain that countless martial artists could only dream about yet never reach. The divine martial realm. Time seemed to go still, and after some time, Wang Chong felt like he had broken through some invisible barrier. Boom! Countless thunderclaps seemed to go off in his ear as he felt like he was entering a new world. Laws. Infinite laws. Wang Chong felt like he was in the middle of space, and under his feet was an azure-domed world barrier. In this barrier were countless intersecting laws forming a net that enclosed this world. These were the laws of the world. Over the last 3 years, Wang Chong had already interacted with these laws countless times, but this was his first time viewing them from this perspective. It was only at this moment that Wang Chong understood that this was the original form of the world laws. These infinite laws jointly worked together to form the mountains, rivers, earth, birds, beasts, insects, fish, flames, smoke. These were transcendent laws. And after the transcendent laws was undoubtedly the divine martial realm. Wang Chong was enlightened and suddenly looked up. In the depths of space, Wang Chong saw a vast river formed from countless points of light. The river of time. This was a power that countless martial artists would never be able to reach. Within it was recorded the history of countless human civilizations, the joys and sorrows of innumerable lives. It was truly the domain of gods. Wang Chong had merely controlled a sliver of time energy before, but this was a vast and mighty river. Only by truly stepping into it could one control time energy and become an expert of the divine martial realm. Buzz! Wang Chong focused his eyes and jumped toward that vast river of time. But when he was still several thousand feet away from it, he felt like some invisible chasm had come to bar his path. It appeared like it was right in front of him, but it was really worlds away. This was a vast and unseeable fissure. Wang Chong suddenly grimaced. Ha ha ha! Back on the surface. Heaven sensed what was going on and heartily laughed. All in vain. All in vain. What does it matter if you've laid down so many tricks? Even if you do everything in your power to stop us, it is all futile. Bang! Heaven madly laughed as thick death energy erupted outward, shattering the seals that Xianxia and the others had used to bind him. At this moment, The energy left by the holders of the Stones of Destiny was completely wiped away, the mental brands they had left completely dissipating. Wang Chong, just like you said, what is not yours will never be yours. 9 Stones of Destiny, 9 sovereigns. They stored up all their dragon chi and poured it into your body. But the calculations are clear. No matter how much dragon chi you have, you are no sovereign. If you cannot obtain the acknowledgement of the world, you will never be able to transcend and enter the divine martial realm. Heaven loudly laughed. When Wang Chong seized his 7 Stones of Destiny, he had really believed that he had failed. But after many twists and turns, it had been proved that nothing could escape his control. Shenyuan, Li Tai, the Qin First Emperor, Emperor Wu of Han, their consciousnesses were gone, and they were now completely dead. There was no one left to stand between him and Wang Chong. Shenyuan, Li Tai, you didn't expect this, did you? It is our turn to strike. Heaven coldly laughed, a bone-chilling killing intent in his eyes. Bang! A moment later, Heaven's body exploded with energy as he soared into the air after Wang Chong. So long as Wang Chong had yet to break into the divine martial realm, he would never be a match for him. Even with 10 Stones of Destiny, his fate would be the same. In the end, the 10 Stones of Destiny would be his. Wang Chong, accept your fate. This is the will of heaven. Heaven's callous voice resounded through the hundreds of millions of parallel dimensions. Who said so? A dignified and young voice came from the rear of the battlefield. All subjects, we proclaim that starting from this moment, Supreme King Wang Chong inherits the throne of the Great Tang, becoming the master of the Central Plains and the continent. Thus is our will. Though the voice was neither too loud nor too soft, almost inaudible compared to the other sounds on this intense battlefield. High up in the sky, Heaven heard these words and suddenly paled. Heaven turned his head back to the battlefield and saw a young figure standing there. This young man wore a crown and a dragon robe, and held a scroll in his hands, a pre-written imperial decree. He stood upon an opulent bronze chariot, and around him were the dragon guards of the Great Tang. Behind him, the dragon banner of the Great Tang danced in the wind. The young sovereign looked up at Heaven with a chilling gaze, showing no fear to this domineering, godlike existence. This man was Li Heng, the youngest sovereign of the Great Tang and the entire continent. His cultivation was far inferior to Heaven's. He was younger than everyone else, and his reputation was far inferior to the sage emperors. And unlike the now-deceased Wang Zhongxi or Bahram, he could not lead the army in combat until death. No one had expected him to stand up at this moment and face down Heaven. The world fell silent, shocked expressions appearing on everyone's faces. It was clear that not even the dragon guards had known about this. In the sky, Heaven had a look of immense shock. He had never taken this young sovereign seriously. In the history of the Central Plains, there had been far too many sovereigns like this who had all the ambition and none of the ability to realize it. In Heaven's eyes, he didn't even count as an ant. He could kill such a person as he pleased, so he had never paid much attention to the young emperor of the Great Tang. But now everything had changed. If Li Heng abdicated to Wang Chong, Wang Chong's last gap would be filled in. He would become a true sovereign, obtain the acknowledgement of the world, and thus become the true master of the world. This meant that nothing would be left that could stop him from entering the divine martial realm. No, we won't allow it. Heaven's eyes flew open as he gnashed his teeth. He had never imagined that this most insignificant of ants would come out at this crucial moment and deal him such a heavy blow. Subjects, why have you not carried out our decree? Li Heng harshly barked. This subject receives the decree. This subject receives the decree. Paying respects to new Emperor Wang Chong. Paying respects to new Emperor Wang Chong. Paying respects to new Emperor Wang Chong. Loud cries came out in response. Everyone getting down on their knees, hot tears in their eyes as they seemed to understand something. You're seeking death. Heaven was overcome with wrath. He immediately thrust out his right palm, and the sky darkened as death energy swept down toward Li Heng. This palm covered a vast region, with the entire area for several 100,000 feet around Li Heng caught up in the attack. When this palm came down, the earth would certainly collapse, and no one would escape, certainly not Li Heng. But Li Heng stood on the bronze chariot unperturbed and fearless, having already predicted what his fate would be. Whoosh! Li Heng's gaze seemed to pierce through the world into the depths of space. At that moment, the countless memories he had of his time with Wang Chong passed through his mind. Wang Chong, thank you. As Li Heng gazed into the distance, a sincere smile appeared on his lips. Thank you for taking care of me for so long, and I am indebted to you. We have no regrets in this life, and to have you as a brother, friend, and subject is our greatest pride. You have helped me many times, so it is my turn to help you. Forgive me for being limited in power. I can only push all the responsibility onto you. A moment later, as that destructive energy descended, Li Heng shot up into the air, charging straight at it. Boom! Before Heaven's attack came down, Li Heng's body exploded. He had detonated his body, soul, and all his stellar energy. Rhea! In the middle of the explosive shockwave, a stream of dragon chi shot upward with a roar, instantly becoming a 9-clawed true dragon. As it absorbed Li Heng's soul and energy, it blazed with light and then tore through space, moving toward Wang Chong before Heaven's attack could land. At that moment, the mountains and rivers trembled, the 9 provinces resonating. With his life as the price, Li Heng had filled in Wang Chong's last flaw. Dragon Chi could sense Dragon Chi. A body and soul with form would be bound by space and laws, but formless Dragon Chi was bound by no such laws. This development came so suddenly that not even Heaven could stop it. Li Heng was even more decisive than he had imagined. No! Heaven let out a world-shaking roar of fury. New! Above the laws, Wang Chong also saw what had transpired, but it was already too late. If even the closer Heaven could do nothing, then Wang Chong could certainly do nothing as well. When had Li Heng made this decision? He had hidden it from everyone, and even Wang Chong had known nothing. Buzz! All Wang Chong had time to do was release his stellar energy to block Heaven's attack, after which that 9-clawed dragon that had absorbed all of Li Heng's energy turned into a stream of light and vanished into Wang Chong's body. Bang! All the parallel dimensions and planes resonated as one. The central plains, the continent, the distant promised land, and even the oceans themselves began to rumble and groan. Spiritual energy erupted from the earth veins and began to resonate with Wang Chong, a limitless flow of energy converging on him from the surrounding universe. Wang Chong had obtained the recognition of the world, becoming the next master of the continent after Li Heng. The new emperor of the Great Tang, the true human emperor. That invisible chasm in front of Wang Chong instantly disappeared. Bang! Wang Chong suppressed the sorrow in his heart and resolutely charged upward, into the vast river of time. The calm river of time instantly began to seethe, limitless time energy flowing through every pore of Wang Chong's body. Wang Chong's energy began to soar, ultimately rising past the half-step divine martial realm into the divine martial realm. No, this shouldn't be how it ends. A few seconds later, Heaven appeared, but he was too late. Endless time energy flowed into Wang Chong's body, and he continued to grow stronger and stronger. And with the power of the Stone of Destiny, he even surpassed Heaven. Heaven's eyes were full of despair. The divine martial realm, the second divine martial realm expert since ancient times, was being born right before his eyes. In Wang Chong's view, Heaven no longer had any advantages. Moreover, after reaching the divine martial realm, the last juncture had been reached, and the 10 stones of destiny at Wang Chong's brow were no longer simply combined, but had now completely fused together. At this moment, the only stone of destiny in the world was that translucent and crystalline one in Wang Chong's brow. The two of them were fused together, and no one else could seize it from him now. The dream that Heaven had pursued for countless years had gone up in smoke. No, this isn't how things should be. Black energy seethed off Heaven's body as the voices of Heaven and Lushan resounded through the universe, brimming with anger and unwillingness. Bang! Heaven and Lushan were furious at this sight, and their fury spurred them on into attacking Wang Chong. Whether it was Heaven or Lushan, neither could accept defeat, nor could they accept the fact that Wang Chong had surpassed them. Heaven and Lushan, it's about time our grudges were brought to an end. In the infinite river of time, Wang Chong could clearly see what heaven was doing, but he remained calm and unflustered. Standing in the river of time, Wang Chong was constantly expanding his understanding of time, space, the universe, and all things, the past, present, and future. In the endless river of time, Wang Chong saw human civilizations rise and fall. Some of these civilizations barely left any trace of their existence on the world, but all they had done was clearly recorded in the river of time. Wang Chong saw the past, and he also saw the future. He even saw the lives of heaven and in Lushan, even small details that they themselves could not remember. Wang Chong could see it all within the river of time. Of course, Wang Chong could also see all the secret arts and techniques that heaven had learned, used, and mastered in his long life. There were no secrets in the river of time. Endless knowledge flowed into his mind, and Wang Chong was like the sea, taking in everything. Throughout the process, his psychic energy grew stronger and stronger, and every time it was on the verge of collapse, Wang Chong would use time energy to reconstruct it. For a person who could control time, time had no meaning. One peak, two peaks. Wang Chong's psychic energy was like a butterfly emerging from its cocoon, constantly rising in power until it reached a frightening level that not even heaven had ever reached. A moment later, Wang Chong opened his eyes and focused on heaven. At this time, heaven's restless sea of black energy had only moved a few dozen feet. When it came to mastery of time energy, Wang Chong could already suppress heaven. Wang Chong's heart was like a placid pool of water, and as he gazed at the furious heaven and in Lushan, he simply thrust out a palm. Wrath of all life. The continent, all of the millions of parallel planes, and even the universe groaned and shuddered. Heaven stared in shock as an enormous figure manifested behind heaven. It was somewhat similar to heaven's celestial emperor avatar, but it was at least 10 times larger. This enormous figure spanned the long river of time and extended into the universe. It was so vast that it could even be seen by the people back on the continent. Whether it was the human soldiers on the Turkic steppe or the ordinary civilians in the Promised Land, even those in the other world could see that avatar that could make even gods tremble in fear. Bang! A moment later, that giant avatar mimicked Wang Chong's actions and thrust out a palm, an attack of boundless destruction striking heaven and in Lushan below. Ah! New! All of the stellar energy in heaven's body exploded, and both heaven and in Lushan let out screams of despair and unwillingness. The two of them streaked down from the sky like a comet, sent by that enormous energy plummeting back down to the human world. Boom! At the moment of impact, the Turkic steppe seemed to experience a magnitude 12 earthquake, the entire continent seeming to sink a little as dust filled the air. A massive shockwave swept out from the steppe and spread out over the continent. Countless mountains trembled, and the shockwave even traveled all the way to the ocean. Bang! After a few seconds, massive waves stirred up in all directions, huge tsunamis nearly 10,000 feet high howling across the heavens. Niai! Even the sea of otherworldly invaders had sensed this development, their bony horses neighing in fear. The seemingly mechanical otherworldly invader army stopped, their expressions growing a little slack. Bang! A moment later, as if they had been frightened off, the otherworldly invaders turned around and began to flood back into the passages they had come from. It was such a chaotic retreat that many of the otherworldly invaders even ran into each other. What happened here? On the battlefield, the battered and fatigued human soldiers were already at the limits of their strength. All of them had been ready to die in this battle. No one had expected the otherworldly invaders to suddenly retreat. They're retreating! They're retreating! The human soldiers began to cheer. It's His Highness! It must be His Highness! On the battlefield, Old Eagle and Xianxia rejoiced. Only their liege was capable of making the otherworldly invaders retreat as if they had been scared off. No, he was no longer simply their liege. He was their emperor. At the same time, in a flash of light, a slender figure descended from the heavens. Upon seeing this figure, All the human soldiers erupted with earth-shaking cheers that resounded through the world. "Your Majesty! Your Majesty!" As the cheers resounded, Wang Chong swiftly moved to the center of the impact zone. He lightly waved his hand, and all the dust scattered. In the middle of the dust was clearly the figure of Heaven. It wasn't over yet. After all, Heaven was a divine martial realm expert. Whether it was in ability or the toughness of his body, he had far surpassed mortal imagination. Even after taking Wang Chong's terrifying attack, Heaven had not immediately died. However, Heaven had suffered an unprecedented wound and was not far from death. Persisting in evil brings about self-destruction. "Heaven, you miscalculated." In front of Heaven, Wang Chong stopped. His expression was calm, devoid of sorrow and joy. Heaven had lost his ability to fight back, lost his ability to bring calamity on the world. Clang! Wang Chong said nothing more, thrusting out his palm. With a resounding clang, the Xianyuan sword flew through the air into Wang Chong's hand. No matter how small ants are, they aren't something you can carelessly trample on. "Heaven, accept your ultimate fate." Wang Chong raised up the sword high into the air with both hands, intending to use the sword of justice to end Heaven's life. "Wang Chong, wait!" Just when Wang Chong was about to bring the sword down, a familiar voice rang out. Wang Chong's body trembled, and he turned around and saw a familiar figure standing there. It was none other than the Arab high priest. Since their last meeting 3 years ago, the high priest had never appeared again, not even during this final battle. But just when Heaven was about to die, the high priest had appeared again. No, perhaps he could not be called the high priest. After reaching the divine martial realm, when Wang Chong looked at the high priest again, he immediately noticed something different about him. There was clearly something else in the high priest's body. Even so, Wang Chong detected no hostility from the high priest. "Wang Chong, could you help me with something? Could you not kill him for now and leave him to me?" The high priest implored Wang Chong. Wang Chong said nothing, his eyebrows furrowing. Old monsters like Heaven were difficult to kill. If he were given the slightest chance, he could rise again and once more bring disaster on the world. Be at ease. His vitality has been severed, and he no longer has the ability to threaten the world. Another voice spoke up. Not far from here, the ground split open, and a familiar figure wearing a tall hat and a thick belt that radiated an ancient aura emerged from within. Senior Guangqing. Even Wang Chong was surprised to see this man. But a moment later, Wang Chong seemed to understand something. In normal circumstances, Heaven's severing of the dragon veins would have made it impossible for me to awaken for the next few decades. But everything has its destiny. I needed to sleep because of a curse placed upon me by Heaven. Now that Heaven has been heavily injured by you and is about to lose all his power, the curse has also ceased to exist, and there is nothing left to bind me. Heaven, you did not imagine this, did you? Master Guangqing slowly stepped forward as he looked at the wounded and weak Heaven. Ha ha ha. Good. We imprisoned you for several thousand years, but in the end you still managed to get out. But even like this, you are still nothing more than someone we defeated. Heaven laughed. Even at the end, at the moment of defeat, he still maintained his domineering and tyrannical pride. We do not require your pity. If this is what you came for, scram. Master Guangqing sighed and shook his head. You are wrong. Though you imprisoned me for several thousand years, and we regarded each other as enemies, we were also once comrades in arms who fought alongside each other. I have come as a friend to see you off in the final part of your journey, Master Guangqing said. Heaven slightly trembled in shock, his smile fading as he was rendered speechless. At this moment, the high priest walked over. Heaven, do you still remember me? The high priest sternly said. You traitor! Heaven furiously rebuked. Seeing the situation before him, how could he not realize that the one who had been leaking information to Wang Chong and helping him behind the scenes was the high priest? The high priest shook his head and said, You are wrong. Look more closely. The high priest slowly closed his eyes, and a moment later, as if a seal in the deepest part of his body had been undone, a new and totally different kind of energy emerged from his body. Behind him, a stranger in the wide robes of a monk manifested. That manifested figure looked at Heaven and said in a time-worn voice, "Heaven, after all these years, we finally meet again." The others didn't have much of a reaction, but Heaven felt like he had been struck by lightning. "Dao Yi, it's you." Heaven stared in shock and disbelief. "It's him." Wang Chong was also shaken as he realized who this was. Moreover, Wang Chong also felt a familiar energy from that illusory figure behind the high priest. This was the energy of the Stone of Destiny, the energy of the earliest. The first Stone of Destiny. Bzzz. Wang Chong's eyes flashed as time energy swept over them. A moment later, Wang Chong seemed to see something in the endless river of time, and his eyelids twitched a little. Dao Yi stared at Heaven and sternly said, "Every sip and bite is preordained by destiny. Fortuitous beginnings and messy ends all have their reasons. Heaven, tens of thousands of years ago, I said to you that if you regarded all life as nothing more than grass seeds, all life would consider you a grass seed. One day, someone would appear to end your outrageous ways. And now, everything is as predicted. No. Impossible. I even had you." Heaven stared in shock, appearing like he had seen a ghost. He had never imagined that his most powerful foe from tens of thousands of years ago would still be alive and right in front of him. Dao Yi placed his palms together and calmly said, "You already killed me tens of thousands of years ago and took my Stone of Destiny, right? At that time, I knew that I could not stop you, so I voluntarily abandoned my physical body and Stone of Destiny, leaving only a wisp of my soul on the body. I drifted about for many years, watching as you destroyed world after world and obliterated innumerable civilizations, carpeting the ground in bodies. I was waiting all this time, knowing that I could never stop you, but that person designated by destiny was certain to appear," Dao Yi sternly said. For many years, he had wandered the world as a soul, unable to do anything but be a spectator to tragedy after tragedy. But now everything was finally ending. Heaven, you were wrong. No matter what your initial intentions were, this was not a reason for you to destroy the world. Master Guangxing sighed and said, "You are now even working against your initial intentions. Things did not need to reach this stage, but alas, you long ago wandered down the wrong path, and there is no going back." "Ha ha ha! We were wrong." The fallen Heaven mockingly laughed. "Only we can truly save the world, to kill life to save life. Wang Chong, Master Guangxing, Dao Yi, do you think you've won? A world without us will only truly begin to face calamity. There is no harm in telling you a secret. We have only occupied the body of the leader of the otherworldly invader expeditionary force, but there are many more like this leader in that world." Buzz. The three of them grimaced at these words. "Ha ha ha! Remember this moment for eternity. Everything is far from over. The true calamity is only just beginning." With these last words, Heaven looked at Wang Chong, a profound smile on his lips. Boom! A moment later, Heaven froze in this final position as if time had stopped. His soul began to rapidly decay, and his body soon disintegrated into particles of dust that vanished into the world. As the oldest and most powerful existence in the world, Heaven had lived for tens of thousands of years, far beyond the scope of an ordinary human. This required an enormous strength, and now that this strength had dispersed, he naturally could no longer maintain his existence. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past, and after a brief silence, the countless human soldiers began to cheer. "It's finally over." As Wang Chong looked at the excited faces around him, he relaxed. After paying a heavy price, humanity had emerged victorious. Though there were still many things that needed to be done, those were matters for the future. "Return to the capital." Wang Chong's simple words triggered a mighty cheer, and countless messenger birds took off in all directions, some of them flying to the promised land. Humanity had finally won. Several years went by in the blink of an eye, and the wounds dealt to the world by that decisive battle on the Turkic steppe slowly recovered. Everything was reviving, and those areas where the ground had broken open and lava had flowed out were now covered in lush grass and grazed upon by vast herds of cattle and sheep. Over in the distant promised land, Countless civilians had returned to the continent after the conclusion of the war. But even so, the Promised Land was not abandoned. It was developed into another place of residence, and as it thrived, it became a new country. Of course, the Promised Land was still a vassal to the Great Tang, and each year countless people and resources traveled between the continent and the Promised Land. After that bitter battle, all the peoples of the continent completely merged together, beginning to marry between each other and mingle. Without the threat of war and with the people safe and happy, the economy flourished, and even fishing industries began to develop. The population exploded, quickly growing to double the population before the war, then triple, quadruple. The human world was growing more and more developed and prosperous. The population explosion and the Supreme King's influence led the new generation of youths to have an adventurous spirit. The polar lands to the north, the oceans to the west, volcanoes, deserts, and even the southern pole to the south of the Promised Land. All of these became areas that they explored. Supported by ample capital, the Great Tang's tower ships also became more developed. Their numbers swelled, and they grew even more grandiose and imposing in size. There was an endless stream of people taking these tower ships to various parts of the world. Some top-class experts in the human world even had the urge to explore the cosmos. At this time, after all the peoples of the continent had been brought together, the capital of the Great Tang had been expanded to 5 times its original size. Grander and with more people than ever before, it had become the new capital of the human world. The imperial palace was the center of the capital, and it, too, had been reconstructed and expanded. It was more opulent and beautiful than before, and at the same time, it had brought together the unique traits of the palaces of the other peoples. However, the core of the complex remained the same. Within Taiha Palace, may the emperor live 10,000 years. A whip cracked 3 times. Officials from the various provinces, including the Promised Land, as well as officials from all the other peoples, entered the hall and hailed the emperor. The entire human world was united, and it extended from the Goguryeo Peninsula in the east all the way to the Red Sea and Baghdad in the west, from the polar lands in the north to the Promised Land in the south, and even a little farther than that. This was so many people that the original bureaucratic system simply could not handle it all. The court officials were no longer called the 100 officials, civil and martial, but the 1,000 officials, civil and martial. Bang! The sight of 1,000 officials prostrating was a spectacle to behold. Above the officials, atop a large dragon throne, was a dignified and majestic figure, the new emperor of humanity, the first human emperor as acknowledged by the people Wang Chong. Whether Arab, Gogrian, Tibetan, Sassanid, or otherwise, everyone felt sincere reverence for the first human emperor. If not for Wang Chong, the human world would have been obliterated. He was the savior of all peoples, and moreover, Wang Chong treated all people equally under the law. This was the unprecedented and legendary era of harmony. As Wang Chong sat above the assembled officials in his dragon robe, his eyes flickered. Several years had passed, and though Wang Chong was still young, he was much changed in appearance. He had a beard around his mouth, and he appeared even more steady and composed. With every move, he exuded the thick aura of a sovereign. The sage emperor, Emperor Wu of Han, and the Qin first emperor were eternal sovereigns hailed throughout the ages. But Wang Chong had clearly surpassed them. To call him the greatest sovereign in history would not at all be absurd. Wang Chong passed his eyes over the officials and declared in a majestic voice, "Honored officials, there are any concerns, please present a memorial. If there is nothing else, withdraw. Your Majesty, this lowly subject has a memorial." As the officials began to step forward, another morning court session commenced. After a long while, the court session ended. Once all the officials were gone, Wang Chong finally rose from his throne. "Is everything ready?" Wang Chong loudly said. "Your Majesty, everything is ready." The officials had left the hall, leaving only Su Kai, Old Eagle, Zhang Ke, and Xue Qinjun, Wang Chong's old subordinates. All of them had excited expressions, seemingly knowing something. Wang Chong took in a deep breath and nodded. In the human world, the long-cherished dream of countless talented individuals had finally been realized. There were so many outstanding individuals that, though the empire was vast, Wang Chong did not have many places he needed to worry about. As for Wang Chong, after 7 years, the moment he anticipated had finally come. Bang! A moment later, as Old Eagle and the others watched, Wang Chong extended his hand and grabbed at the air. At the same time, a large crystal appeared at the center of Wang Chong's brow, blazing with light. It was none other than the Stone of Destiny. Stone of Destiny, open the dimension. Without the slightest hesitation, Wang Chong communicated with the Stone of Destiny. Within the Stone of Destiny, in a hidden dimension, balls of light floated. Within each ball of light was a figure that pulsed with soul energy. Sensing those familiar energies, Wang Chong couldn't help but get excited. Master, Village Chief, Senior Su, Unity Supreme, Luo Supreme. Wang Chong muttered as he identified those energies. 7 years. In that epic battle 7 years ago, countless people had sacrificed their lives. The demonic Emperor Old Man, the Wuxiang Village Chief, Su Zhengchen, Li Xuantu, Unity Supreme, Luo Supreme, Li Sai. To save him, everyone had died to heaven. This was an eternal source of pain for Wang Chong. But when Wang Chong fused with the Stone of Destiny and successfully reached the divine martial realm, he was given an opportunity. Whether it was the demonic Emperor Old Man, the Wuxiang Village Chief, or any of the others, they were all top-class experts with formidable souls. Although they were dead, their souls had not completely dissipated. With the powerful abilities of the Stone of Destiny, Wang Chong had successfully gathered up their souls and placed them in the Stone of Destiny, where they were nurtured by its formidable powers. Bit by bit, Wang Chong had pulled them away from the precipice of death. So long as the soul survived, they still had some hope of living. Essence Supreme had the ability to repair and remold souls, and the complete Stone of Destiny had the same ability. But life and death were the domains even beyond the reach of gods and devils. Even gathering their souls had needed 7 years. Buzz! Wang Chong began to pour universal energy into the balls of light, and at the same time, his stockpile of destiny energy began to rapidly drain away. Finally, those balls of light began to solidify and transform into those people Wang Chong was so familiar with. Bang! In a flash of light and a powerful pulse of energy, these figures began to appear in the hall. The demonic Emperor Old Man, the Wuxiang Village Chief, Su Zhengchen, Li Xuantu, Luo Supreme, Unity Supreme, Li Sai. Their bodies began to rapidly manifest in the hall. Wang Chong had already prepared clothes for all of them. When the entire process was over, they all began to open their eyes as if they were waking up from a dream. At the start, they all had blank expressions on their faces, but their memories soon came rushing back. Chong-er! A moment later, they all saw Wang Chong in his dragon robe. Master, Senior. Wang Chong excitedly strode forward. After 7 years, he had finally saved them all. Chong-er! What in the world happened? The demonic Emperor Old Man was the first to speak, his expression one of utter confusion. What he was seeing was completely different from his memories. Smiling, Wang Chong told them everything that had happened in the last 7 years. A while later, the demonic Emperor Old Man and the others departed in shock. There was far too much for them to digest. Moreover, they had just awoken, and their souls were not very stable, so they needed to rest. Everyone left, and the hall once more fell quiet. Even Old Eagle and Zhang Ke had departed this time. With no one else around, Wang Chong softly sighed, a hint of sorrow on his face. Li Heng had not been among the people revived. When the battle ended, Wang Chong had tried every method possible, including soul fire, to gather his soul, but all his efforts had failed. At that moment, Wang Chong had known that Li Heng would not be coming back. The demonic Emperor Old Man and the others had died in battle, but Li Heng was different. He had transformed all of his soul energy into dragon chi and merged it into Wang Chong's body, leaving behind no trace of his soul. He had truly vanished from the world, and not even the Stone of Destiny could change that. Wang Chong, when you read this letter, I will no longer be here. In truth, I learned from Senior Guangxing a long time ago that Dragon Chi was the secret of the divine martial realm. and that it had to be the son of heaven's dragon Qi. But I also knew that if I abdicated to you, you would never accept. Thus, please forgive me for not telling you beforehand, or anyone else. There is no need to mourn me. I am the emperor of the Central Plains, so it is right that I protect my people in my own way. This was my own choice. In addition, to have you as a friend and brother, Li Heng has no regrets. Wang Chong took that letter from his sleeve, his heart racked with sorrow as he read those familiar words. Li Heng. It was truly an honor to have you as my friend. After saying this, Wang Chong solemnly folded up the letter, stored it away close to his chest, and walked out of the hall. Prepare my carriage to Morning Phoenix Palace. Pushing open the door, Wang Chong entered Morning Phoenix Palace. Beyond the draping curtain, he saw the familiar and graceful figure garbed in phoenix crown and robes, her gentle and affectionate face beautiful to behold. Qi, I kept you waiting. Wang Chong smiled as he quickly strode over. Epilogue. Time flew by, and 10 some years went by in the blink of an eye. In the northwest, amidst howling winds, a vast human army swept across the earth. All of the soldiers were fully armored, their bodies radiating unprecedented power. This was the strongest army the human world could muster, many times stronger than even the United Army in the war that had happened years ago. At this time, a golden armored figure stood tall, his red cape flapping in the wind. The day has finally come. Wang Chong sat atop the white-hoofed shadow and exhaled. The human world was currently prosperous and powerful, far more so than in any other dynasty, perhaps even more than any other civilization in history. But Wang Chong had something that he couldn't put down yet: the otherworldly invaders. In human history, the otherworldly invaders would always appear at set intervals and start a large-scale invasion, destroying civilization again and again. Their origins had always been a mystery. Before dying, heaven had revealed a little about them, and through the Stone of Destiny and the River of Time, Wang Chong was able to see a few things, but he never had the full picture. Those otherworldly invaders and the world they originated from were seemingly special existences that surpassed time. Meanwhile, for Wang Chong, the human world was united, all its peoples under the same dynasty. If the otherworldly invaders were not taken care of, the same doomsday would happen again and again. Even if they were able to get through this time, it didn't mean they could get through the next, or the one after that, or the one after that. The time is ripe. It's now time to end everything. Wang Chong's eyes flashed, and his expression quickly hardened with resolve. Is everything ready? Wang Chong said. Your Majesty, everything is ready. The spatial passage can be opened at any time, the formation elder respectfully said. Begin. Wang Chong gave the order, and a moment later, with a fierce rumble, a massive formation activated. A moment later, a spatial passage 10 some li in diameter opened up in front of the army. On the other side was a dark, cold, and mysterious world brimming with death energy. The moment this passage opened, cold energy rolled out, instantly sealing the area around the teleportation gate in thick ice, and the ice began to spread with astonishing speed. The other world. Wang Chong and everyone who had taken part in the decisive battle immediately knew that this was the world the otherworldly invaders had come from. Everyone became agitated. Clang. Wang Chong pulled out the Shenyuan sword and pointed it at the sky. Move out. Kyle. A moment later, with loud war cries, the human army led by Wang Chong charged into this unknown world. This was the first time in decades that an army had ever charged into the world of the otherworldly invaders, the first time in human history. With a massive rumble, countless soldiers disappeared into the passage. Dark, cold, silent. This was a world abandoned by the gods. Here, everything was frozen, even the flow of time. All that was here was a ground covered in bones, a frigid energy, and the army of otherworldly invaders. Unlike the orderly human world, in this vast world, all of the otherworldly invaders were either standing on the ground or on horseback, but they were all scattered across the world. The vast majority were fixed in place like statues, and only a few of them were randomly wandering around. Those numerous crimson eyes in the darkness were terrifying to behold. There was no day or night here, and time always remained in this state. Buzz. Without the slightest warning, a powerful pulse of energy rippled through the darkness. Cackalack. With the sound of cracking joints, several nearby otherworldly invaders seemed to sense something and turned their heads to the pulse of energy. Their crimson eyes were filled with confusion as if they didn't know what was happening. This was because nothing like this had ever happened before. Bang! Before these otherworldly invaders could react, swish. A golden spear flew through the air and penetrated through the head of an otherworldly invader, the enormous energy nailing it to the ground. Rumble. A massive space-time passage appeared in the sky, and infinite light washed over this dark world. Kyle! Furious war cries broke the stillness of the world, and in a few short moments, the human army flooded in through the passage. Rumble. The earth groaned as the hooves of countless horses thundered, brilliant halos beneath their feet. The otherworldly invaders closest to the teleportation gate were the first to be struck by the charge, the energy of the impacts surging into their bodies and breaking them apart. Confusion, chaos, shock. The numerous otherworldly invaders clearly didn't understand what was going on. Many of them were slain while still just standing around as if their minds had crashed. But very quickly, like blood had been spilled into the middle of a pack of sharks, the innumerable otherworldly invaders in this world smelled the special scent of the human army and roared. Gray-white halos erupted from the feet of the otherworldly invaders, and they rushed at the human army in frenzied waves. Bellows and roars came from all parts of the other world, and the entire place became restless. The human army did not back down in the slightest against this vast army of otherworldly invaders. On the contrary, their bodies erupted with fighting intent. Who said that the human side could only be passive? It was now humanity's turn to strike back against the otherworldly invaders. After several decades, the human army had completely changed. Clang! As the army charged, dark golden triangular awls, 10 some feet long and covered in mysterious symbols, were thrust into the ground, one after the other. There were 3 to a group, each group instantly forming a small formation, and these numerous small formations joined together to form a chain formation. As the formation activated, an invisible energy spread out, instantly scattering the terrifying cold energy. In this world of the otherworldly invaders, the human army had created a purified land. The most powerful trait of the otherworldly invaders was that terrifying and ever-present cold energy. Even their terrifying vitality that allowed them to survive mortal wounds was connected to this energy. If the cold energy could be removed, a zone created that the cold energy could not enter, the otherworldly invaders would be greatly weakened. This was the result of the last 10 some years of research in the human world. Thus, those dark golden awls had been created. For this operation, the human world had produced nearly 10 million of these awls, capable of creating a vast purified land in the other world. Awoo! And this was not all. Furious bellows and gouts of flame erupted from the human army, the flames starting as tiny glows and rapidly rising to a height of several hundred to several thousand feet. Ultimately, these flames transformed into terrifying black and red monsters made of high-temperature flames. Ifrits. It was none other than the Ifrits. The otherworldly invaders had cold constitutions, and ordinary weapons had very little effect on them. But Ifrits were different. These were the only creatures that could naturally counter the otherworldly invaders. Ifrits were the product of the Landeshunger civilization and had been developed specifically to counter the otherworldly invaders. Alas, they had ultimately failed, and their countless Ifrit experiments had been extinguished, condensing into black crystals that were scattered across the subterranean world in eternal hibernation. After the unification of the human world, Wang Chong had once more paid a visit to the Landeshunger ruins. Using the power of time, he had successfully gathered clues and secrets that allowed him to uncover the Ifrit creation technology of the Landeshunger and perfect it. With the unique power of the Ifrit king, Wang Chong was able to create more than 1,000 Ifrits. Led by the Ifrit king, they created a special Ifrit army. Niai. Horses neighed as countless otherworldly invaders charged a towering Ifrit and surrounded it. But with a hiss, the giant Ifrit punched at them with a gush of flame. Several dozen otherworldly invaders were engulfed in the flames and began to burn. These flames were extremely effective against the otherworldly invaders, and even their horses shrieked from the pain inflicted by the fire. Thump thump. A few moments later, the otherworldly invaders exploded into ash from the Ifrit's attack. But for the otherworldly invaders, the fiercest attack still originated from the human world's army. Clang clang clang. Halos resonated and metal clattered as halo after halo erupted from the feet of the soldiers, at least 10 to each soldier. Defense, attack, agility, earth, fire, water. There were all kinds of halos, each one cultivated almost to the maximum. This was an army that was truly armed to the teeth. In terms of strength, these human soldiers were at profound martial tier 7, even tier 8, which was formerly the average cultivation level of a general in earlier human armies. The Xianhuang Link Formation, the 10 Charges 10 Victories Formation, the 9 Provinces Universal Formation, the 9 Dragon Blood War Banner, the 9 Cauldrons of the Central Plains. They had brought countless methods to counter the otherworldly invaders. Amongst all these powers, the 9 Cauldrons Division was undoubtedly the most effective against the otherworldly invaders. Unlike the 100,000-some soldiers of the 9 Cauldrons Division of the past, Wang Chong and the Formation Elder had succeeded in linking the entire human army to the 9 Cauldrons. Even ordinary swords and sabers were infused with this power that countered the otherworldly invaders. Whoosh! A spear thrust out, piercing through the body of an otherworldly invader. In the past, this sort of wound would have been insignificant, and the stabbed otherworldly invader might even use the chance to kill the human soldier. But this time, the otherworldly invader's body stiffened, and then an invisible energy caused its flesh to drop from its bones and caused it to topple to the ground. Thud thud thud. In this dark world, swaths of otherworldly invaders were cut down by the human army, completely turning into corpses. Furious roars resounded through the army. By absorbing the energy of the otherworldly invaders, the Ifrits seemed to reach a threshold. Viscous embers spread out from their bodies, sprinkling across the land. As each seed hit the ground, it would turn into a being of fire, which would rapidly grow until it became a new Ifrit. This process repeated, and as more and more Ifrits appeared in this world, the darkness began to give way to light. Routed. An endless rout. Without the advantage of their undying cold energy, these otherworldly invaders were just ordinary soldiers, and when it came to training and coordination, they were far inferior to the human army. Countless otherworldly invaders were felled, and countless more rushed in, trying to charge up information. But the constant charges of the human army obliterated them, slicing them into small groups that were exterminated. Awoo! Suddenly, a heaven-shaking bellow of rage came from the depths of the dark world, and powerful pulses of black energy swept out. Even the Ifrits were affected, the flames on their bodies dimming and flickering. The god of the other world. Upon sensing this heavy pressure and thick death energy, the demonic emperor Old Man and Wuxiang village chief turned grim. This chaotic and destructive energy, as vast as a sea, was far above the grotto heaven realm, at a truly shocking level. There was no doubt that this was the god of those otherworldly invaders. The words heaven had said before his death were not wrong. There was more than one ruler, more than one god of the other world in this realm. Wrath of the universe. At this tense moment, a bellow came from the heavens. In the sunless sky of the other world, 3 enormous figures manifested. In a flash of light, 3 swords made of shadows descended, and explosions rang out. A moment later, with unwilling screams of rage, those gods of the other world were wiped out of existence. His Majesty! It's His Majesty! The human army erupted with cheers. It was obvious that only the human emperor was capable of so easily killing those 3 gods of the other world. After a long, long while, the battle concluded. The bodies of the otherworldly invaders carpeted this dark world, their bodies rapidly decaying, darkening, and shriveling. There was no chance of them reviving. After this battle, the world was bright and brilliant due to the light radiated by countless Ifrits. Through this war, the Ifrit numbers had swelled to 100,000. Scattered across this world, they became the greatest source of light for this world. Only one last thing is left. With the battle over, Wang Chong rode the white-hoofed shadow up to the front of his army and peered into the distance. All of you wait here. I will be back soon, Wang Chong suddenly said. Yes, your majesty, the generals respectfully answered. Wang Chong spurred the white-hoofed shadow forward, and at the end of this world, he saw a silvery light. This was a long, wide bridge of ice. Beneath the bridge of ice was not solid ground, but the infinite void. Tap. Wang Chong stepped onto the bridge of ice and advanced. Chill radiated from the surface of the bridge, but it was quickly dispersed by Wang Chong's power. The only sound on the ice bridge was the sound of hooves against the ice. No one knew where the ice bridge led, only that its end was beyond the mental senses of martial artists. Only Wang Chong could vaguely sense something. As he advanced, there was initially nothing on the bridge. Gradually, however, Wang Chong began to see bodies. While many people might have seen these corpses and seen nothing in them, Wang Chong had recognized what they were at a glance. There were giants, dwarfs, and bull-headed people amongst these corpses, as well as sea beasts, six-armed Azuras, and other mythical creatures. Of course, there were also many humans, but their clothes were completely different from any worn back in the human world. There were not many of these corpses at first, and they were scattered across the ice bridge. But as he proceeded farther along the bridge, more and more corpses appeared. By the end, there were mountains of corpses, so many that Wang Chong was forced to have his horse float in the air in order to advance. After some time, at the end of the ice bridge, in the middle of a sea of corpses, Wang Chong saw that thing, or perhaps it was better to say that creature. This was because Wang Chong sensed vitality from this enormous being. This was a mountainous life form. It had no head, no feet, and no eyes, but its body was covered in pitch-black cavities, and it contracted and expanded like a beating heart. Caw! The frightening wail of an infant could be heard, and Wang Chong saw a giant ball of flesh slide out of one of the pitch-black cavities. This ball of flesh was dripping with blood. The moment it hit the ground, its form began to shift. The outermost embryonic membrane swiftly sloughed off, revealing a human form within, possessing crimson eyes, a half-decayed body, and an aura of extremely cold death energy. This was clearly an otherworldly invader. Wang Chong immediately understood that this massive life form that was hundreds of thousands of feet tall was the originator of all the otherworldly invaders, their mother. Seemingly sensing the threat of Wang Chong, the massive mother began to frantically pulse, more and more balls of flesh emerging from its cavities. It seemed to want to swiftly create another army of otherworldly invaders to protect itself. Wang Chong shook his head and indifferently said, "It's useless." While this life form had no head, hands, or feet, Wang Chong could sense that it had a soul. This was a true life form, and Wang Chong was sure that it could hear his voice. Boom, boom, boom. Wang Chong glanced at the newborn otherworldly invaders, and without even moving, he sent an enormous pressure down that caused those otherworldly invaders to explode into clumps of blood and flesh before they could fully mature. "Just give up. You're no match for me," Wang Chong said, floating in the air. As if he had cast a spell, that massive life form on the other side stopped moving, and even the ceaseless flow of balls of flesh came to a stop. After what seemed like a second and like countless epochs, that enormous life form began to speak with a slightly panicked voice. "No, this isn't how it should be. This universe should be destroyed, truly as expected." Wang Chong muttered, seeming to speak both to the life form and to himself. "Answer me. Why did you appear here, and why do you want to destroy the human world again and again?" Wang Chong coldly questioned. The world fell silent, and after a long while the massive life form spoke. "Because this is our duty. Let me go." The massive life form began to plead for its life. "I am merely carrying out my duty. Even if you kill me, you cannot change anything. Weren't you seeking the truth? If you let me go, I can tell you whatever you want to know." "There's no need." Wang Chong shook his head and grinned. "It is better if I find some truths myself." Rumble. Time seemed to stop as a beam of sword chi swept through the air, slicing the massive life form in two. Bang! A moment later, the massive life form exploded into a deluge of gore. Wang Chong was calm and unruffled. He quickly swept his gaze over the ground, ultimately resting on a small crystal in the middle of the remains. This was a glassy shard that was about the size of a fingernail. It appeared extremely similar to Wang Chong's Stone of Destiny and was infused with universal energy, but it was of a completely different nature. Wang Chong's stone represented destiny, but Wang Chong sensed that this shard represented pure destruction that transcended all other energies. Merely interacting with the energy in this shard would snap the meridians and shatter the soul of a half-step divine martial expert. Even Wang Chong had to rely on the Stone of Destiny to render himself immune to this unique destructive energy. Buzz! Wang Chong lifted up the shard and sent it into the Stone of Destiny. Boom! A split second later, the Stone of Destiny erupted with light, and that familiar voice rang out in Wang Chong's mind. The final mission is complete. Unlocking seal. User has obtained the ultimate privilege, revealing the final secret of the universe. Boom! As if he had been taken back to the beginning of the universe, Wang Chong saw an explosion of infinite light. At the same time, his soul was pulled into the Stone of Destiny, drawn into another, massive dimension. There, Wang Chong saw the entire universe. No, it was not just the entire universe. In this space, he could see universe after universe, and each universe had a different energy. There were 49 of these universes in total. Even though Wang Chong had mentally prepared himself, he was still shaken by this sight. This was no simple simulation. Wang Chong could sense that these distant spinning universes actually existed. The number of the Great Tao is 50. The heavens possess 49, and one is missing. The Stone of Destiny's emotionless voice rang out in Wang Chong's ears. In the infinite void, what you call the primordial chaos, there are 49 universes in all, but none of this is eternal. The number of the Great Tao is 50, and the one that escaped represents not merely limitless variables, but also a universe that has been wiped away. Thus, at set intervals, a new universe will come into being within the primordial chaos, and correspondingly, a universe is bound to be wiped away. All life forms are born, grow old, and die. The same is true for universes. In this way, the Stone of Destiny revealed the greatest secret of the universe to Wang Chong. Rumble. As the Stone of Destiny spoke, the void shifted. Wang Chong saw a spiraling universe suddenly emerge in the empty darkness, and elsewhere, a mature universe began to flicker like a guttering candle, and then go out. One after another, birth and death. This happened in the primordial chaos again and again. Wang Chong was stunned. Wang Chong had long ago known about the number of the Great Tao being 50, with the heavens using 49, but he had never known this to be its true meaning. A single universe contained countless parallel dimensions and innumerable lives, but all of them were just destroyed like that. Do you understand now? Seeming to understand what Wang Chong was thinking, the Stone of Destiny spoke again. None of this is unchangeable. Any aging universe on the verge of destruction has one chance to escape oblivion, and it is for this reason that the Stone of Destiny exists. The universe is a composite life form created from life and will. Any life has the desire and will to live, and the universe is the same. The strength of a desire of a universe to live determines the final chances of a universe's survival. This is why you were chosen. Wang Chong was so stunned that he couldn't speak. I had already selected 9 people, but they all failed. You are the last chance this universe has for survival. If you failed as well, this universe would ultimately die, and all life within it would be wiped away. Wang Chong peered into the endless void. He saw a newborn universe, and he saw a universe that was shrouded in shadow. So, those otherworldly invaders, and this thing in my hands, are the things used to destroy these universes, correct? Wang Chong pensively said. Yes, you may call it the Stone of Destruction, the Stone of Destiny said. Buzz. The mention of the Stone of Destruction caused the scene to shift once more, and Wang Chong saw a crystal appear in the center of the void. This stone was extremely similar to the Stone of Destiny, but it was pitch black and seemed to absorb light. Swoosh! A moment later, The shard in Wang Chong's hand flew into the air and disappeared into the stone of destruction. At almost the same time, boom! An enormous will rippled through the universe and reached Wang Chong's location. Fool! Puny being! What does it matter if you manage to escape once? Destruction is ever present. Even if this universe escapes, another universe will be destroyed, and after a long time, my strength will once more descend upon this universe. All you have done is put off the inevitable. You have resolved nothing. As the stone of destruction spoke, the void rumbled and the universes trembled. This destructive energy was enough to stifle any soul. Wang Chong couldn't help but be shaken by this, but a moment later, he smiled. Every living being has some worth in its existence. This universe has me, and while other universes do not have me, there will naturally be others who will appear. The stone of destruction was clearly surprised by Wang Chong's words. They had clearly not been the answer it was expecting. Is that so? I'm looking forward to it. With a cold laugh, the will of the stone of destruction disappeared. As it disappeared, Wang Chong saw other figures appear in the void. It seemed like there were other powers in this universe besides the stone of destiny and the stone of destruction. But Wang Chong simply laughed and got a hold of himself. His mission was done, and what came next was for another epic, was the story of someone else. It's time to head back. In a flash of light, Wang Chong disappeared. The end.